today I want to share out of Exodus. I want to read from chapter 3. I want to share verses 10 through 12. This is where Moses gets his mission from God after God reveals himself at the burning bush. And God tells, and after God tells Moses that he has heard the cries of his people in Egypt, he's seen their oppression, and that he is going to take them to a land of abundance, basically, um, so that they can live. And then verse 10, this is the exact mission that God gives Moses. So let's read 10, 11, and 12 here in Exodus 3. And this is God speaking to Moses. Therefore, come now, and I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you may bring my people to the sons of Israel out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and what should I bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, this being God, certainly I will be with you, and this shall be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God at this mountain. So I call this devotional covered because essentially that's what God's telling Moses, that he about this mission. God's basically telling Moses, "I got this covered." Um, Now Moses, we know, was a Hebrew child who was saved because his mother um, put him in a wicker basket and secretly floated him down the Nile when all the Hebrew babies, male babies, were being slaughtered, um, because the population was getting so big that Pharaoh feared that they might rebel and overtake him. Um, and then, Pharaoh's own daughter hears Moses crying and draws Moses out of the water. And that's how Moses actually got his name, was because he was drawn from the water. And so Moses was raised in Pharaoh's uh, palace, and Pharaoh's home. So I believe that, one, God chose Moses because he was a Hebrew by birth, but also because he is the only Hebrew that could probably gain access to Pharaoh. You know, from an earthly standpoint. Um, because Moses killed an Egyptian, um, and when it was discovered that the Hebrews knew about it, he figured, I need to get out of town because Pharaoh's going to have me killed for killing an Egyptian. You know, he wasn't taking any chances. He split, of course. Uh, Moses was the right thing because Pharaoh was going to execute him, and when Moses ran out in the desert, they pretty much left him for dead. So, if I remember right, and so I'm kind of getting off point here. So basically, that kind of, to me, that kind of set up that why Moses was the perfect person that God had chosen to go get his people from Egypt. Um, if Pharaoh, and I'm thinking that Pharaoh might have even been Moses' step brother. could be wrong, but I could be remembering wrong, but I think timeline wise, I think that Pharaoh could have been Moses's stepbrother, adopted brother or whatever, because the Pharaoh that wanted him executed for killing the Egyptian had passed on, if I remember right. So I would think that Pharaoh would want to see Moses anyways to truly see that he was alive. But I could be off track on that, guys. I didn't go to seminary or anything like that. So, um, but so I think that's the answer to who am I? Moses thought so little of himself. It was like, I'm a nobody. Pharaoh's not going to talk to me. But I think because of the circumstances that Moses grew up in, I think that gave him the perfect and only ability to get to Pharaoh. I mean, with God, anything's possible. God could have took somebody, else, but I think God chose Moses because of his specific upbringing. Um, and then, and so that wasn't the first question. The second question was, and what should I bring to the sun? How am I going to get these people out of Egypt? What am I going to bring? And God said, and God's answer is simple: certainly I will be with you. In other words, you are to take nothing but yourself, because I'm going to be there with you, and that's all you need is me. So essentially, that's what I mean when I say covered, because God is telling Moses that he's got it covered. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And God says, in fact, to prove to you that I am telling you the truth, when you do get them out of Egypt, you're going to come to this mountain and worship me. And of course, we know in the end that's what they do. But if when you read further along, Moses, um, he's very hesitant because he tries to come up with reasons why he can't do this, and God has an answer for it all. you know, you know, Moses is like, well, what am I going to say to them to prove that you sent me? And I mean, God had an answer for every excuse that Moses tried to come up with to not do the mission that God had set before him. And in the end, Moses obeyed God, which means that Moses trusted God and Moses pushed through with God's plan as he was told faithfully. So, what does that mean for us today? One, if God wants us to do something, God is going to provide for that something. We need to not worry about earthly things that we need or have to deal with um, things beyond our control because God's in control. I mean, we could keep coming up with all sorts of excuses. Well, I can't speak. I don't know how to talk right. Uh, you know, how are they going to believe me? What am I going to say to them that they're going to believe that I was sent by you? Excuse me. So if God has a plan for you, when He gives you that plan, He's already got everything laid out because His will happen, irregardless. Um, but we do have that choice. We can obey, trust and faith, and move forward with God, or we can say no and don't. Um, but God chose you for this particular mission because He made you for that mission. You were designed for the very thing He's asking you to do. Um, are there going to be difficulties, or are there going to be peaks and valleys during the mission? Absolutely. Um, God never said that everything was going to be easy for us. Quite the opposite. Usually things are very difficult for us. Um, like, uh, I can't tell you how many times I would spend perusing the Bible, waiting for something to come out at me, um, to share, and just nothing's clicking, But I believe and have faith that God will eventually show me something, and He does, and I share, and I just pray that whenever I share, that I interpret what I am trying to share with correctly, and that what I share reaches to somebody out there. Excuse me. So, but I have to have faith to do that. And for the longest time, I kept pushing back and saying, you got the wrong guy, God. I can't do this. I didn't go to school. I didn't go to seminary. But um, but I eventually said yes to sharing this every morning, and I have not stopped. Um, for those who've been with me for a while on my devotional journey, um, know that I haven't I haven't skipped a beat, even through the devastation of my father's sudden death. I didn't miss a day because God's um, word needs to be shared every day, not just when it's convenient for me. Um, Now, there's been days where I've had issues with YouTube and my laptop, but I still did them, and I would get response. I would get responses. Couldn't get your video downloaded, so I would faithfully go back and redo those. Um, but I don't let it stop me. I think I had 3 times with my laptop. I said the internet connection wasn't stable, but then it corrected itself. Says you're live, and so thought everything was okay. Only found out the next day that I'm getting couldn't download your video. I was like, oh, okay. So I would redo them on the phone here. So, um, but it's like little bumps in the road like that are put in place. Um, those particular bumps are for me. You know, am I gonna push on and redo it, or am I gonna say, okay, I've had enough, I quit? Um, Quitting is not an option though for me. So I'll redo it, and unfortunately for those days that people couldn't see anything because something went wrong technological wise, I apologize. But like I said, those are the types of bumps in the road that are thrown at me, that the enemy is trying to get me to quit doing what I'm doing for God, what God's asking me to do, and I can't do that. I cannot let Satan win, and I will not let Satan win. Um, so don't worry about who am I? Why are you picking me? Instead, grasp it, embrace it, and give in and say, yes, Lord, I will do this for you. Because trust me, when you do, Even though you're going to have bumps in the roads, you're going to have peaks and valleys. In the end, you're going to be glad that you did it because He's going to give you so much joy in your heart for doing what He's asking you to do. And with that, I love you guys. You have a blessed day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.